Hey, welcome to part 4. So in part 4, we will look at what it will take to take this guy and modify the topology here in zBrush, and then also create UVs, and let's bring him into Substance Painter to create some textures. What would be the process, the technical process of executing something like that if you have a character that is well over 2 million points, right? So he's kind of a high res, and that didn't stop us from polypainting him and bringing him into Blender in part 3, where we did some beautiful rendering. But in this one, what if you wanted to turn this into a game character? What would be the process for that? Alright, you guys, so to get started, there's going to be two things that we need. We're going to need a low poly version of this character, which we need to create. And then, of course, we can maintain the high one for baking our textures. Because there's some details that we've done in our past videos that we can actually bring over to Substance Painter. Like the, I'm not even talking about the polypaint. Actually, you know what? Let me turn off the polypaint. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click on the paint to turn it off on all the layers. And so I'm not interested in paint, right? Because we could just do the paint in Substance Painter very easily, right? That was kind of a basic painting job. But in here, what we do want to bring over to our textures is like these feathers that we did some detail on the feathers. There's a little bit, a little sculpting that we did on the cigar, right? And our bandana has some details. So all of those things are important to bring over into the normal map or the texture map. So in other words, we do need a high version of this character for baking purposes. So let's tackle that first. We did create something called merged in our past video, in our last video. Now, if I click on that one, right, the one that we brought to Blender, this could almost work, except there's one small problem. The weapons, if you look closely, they're kind of low resolution, right? Which means if I bake this, with this version as my high poly, all of these lines are going to be part of the texture map, and I don't want that, right? I don't want these kind of facety, things on my weapons. I would like this to be smooth. So this is not going to work, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete that so I don't get confused. I'm going to go back to this version, and now you can see that I do have dynamics turned on for my weapons. And what I'm going to do is, again, this is all part of part 3, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this layer with the weapons, and instead of turning dynamics on, I'm actually going to do Control D to subdivide this, and I'm going to subdivide this 3 times, right? So again, if you look really closely, I do want this smooth surface for my weapons, right? And that's going to take me really high. It's going to take me to 5.7 million points because I'm doing the bullets and the 2 weapons. All right, beautiful. So this is going to be a good looking high res version for baking. So just like we've done before, let me take all of this and say merge visible. When I click on merge visible, that's going to give me a merge tool, right? All of these layers are now merged together. You can see that. And now you just have to ask yourself if 5.7 million points is too much for a high res character, right? Because if you don't have a super fast computer, bringing in a 5.7 million point model into Substance Painter, even for baking, could be somewhat, troublesome, right? So is there a way to maintain our high resolution character and at the same time reduce the number of total points, right? Is there such a thing? And there is. We could do something called decimation. So let's use Decimation Master to maintain our high res version for our character, but at the same time reduce the total points. So to get this going, let's do this. Let's do pre-process current. So I'm going to click on this button right here in the Decimation Master. And I'm not interested in using PolyPaint or keeping PolyPaint because, again, I want to do all the textures in Substance Painter. So I'm not interested in that, but I do want to reduce the total points. So I'm going to say pre-process current. Once that finishes, let's decide how much do we want to reduce the total points number by, right? So right now, by default, it's set to 20%. I'm gonna leave it at 20%, and I'm just gonna say decimate current. When I click decimate current, I want you to pay a really close attention to the quality of your model and make sure that all of the detail stays exactly the same, right? So I'm gonna even zoom in to show you guys, right? So this is what it is right now at 5.7 million. I'm gonna go ahead and say decimate. All right, once I decimated, you can see that the quality has seemingly stayed exactly the same. I can't tell the difference whatsoever, right? But one thing that did change is now I'm at 1.1 million points versus almost 6, right? That's a big, big difference. And this right here is going to be absolutely perfect for a high-res version for baking textures in Substance Painter. So this is done, right? So now what we just need to do is just simply export this guy as our high-res version. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to export, and in here I'm going to choose the OBJ file. You're welcome to use FBX. On my personal computer, for some reason, OBJ seems to be a lot more stable. I'm going to do that. FBX works just as good, but I'm going to go ahead and say high res, and let's go ahead and do let's do something like turkey underscore high res, right? So we know what this is. All right, I'm going to say save. All right, beautiful. So that is the end of that. Let's go ahead and work on our low poly version of this guy next. I'm going to go into this here, and let's take a look and see how many actual layers of subtools we have. There's quite a few, right? And you probably have something really similar if you followed my tutorials closely. You will have probably very similar structure of files, right? And even if you don't, the process is not really that different, even if this is a little bit different on your end. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to press Shift and click on the eyeball to hide everything else and just deal with one element at a time. So the first I'm going to do is go to the very top. For me, is this head, right? So what I need to do is I need to take this head and I need to turn it into a low poly version, right? So how do I do that? Well, let's discuss each element very quickly. I'm going to turn on my polyframe, and right now this element right here is super high. It's 258,000 points. And you might think to yourself, well, that's not that bad, but it is incredibly high if this is going to be a game model, right? This is completely not going to work. So let's go ahead and zRemesh this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to geometry. I'm going to go to zRemesher, and in here I'm going to dial my target down to something super low, like 1. For this mesh here, I'm going to turn adapt off. Adapt just means insert extra edges to keep the form. I'm not really interested in that for something like this. It seems somewhat simple, right? So I'm going to say 1. I definitely will not turn active symmetry on, because if you look closely on my model, I actually lowered the eyebrows and that broke the symmetry, right? So my model is not symmetrical. And the only other thing I want to point out to you guys is you can actually control the flow of the topology by creating groups. And let me show you how that works. It's actually very useful. If I make my brush just a little bit smaller, I can press Control, go to my quick picks, make sure my pen is selected here. And now if I hold on Control key, I can just make a circle around the brows here. And then what I can do is I can press Control W. And what I've done is I created a group, a flow, right? To tell zBrush that, hey, maybe this is going to be kind of a circular topology, right? So that's going to help us to create automatic topology for this mesh. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to press Control, and let me just go around and just make like a circle. It doesn't need to be precise, but something along these lines is good enough. I'm going to press Control W, and now you see what I've done. I have 2 of them. And that's pretty great, right? What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to my zRemesher, and in here I'm going to say keep groups. And that's going to tell zBrush to please keep the green and this purple and the red one, right? Respect these groups. And now let's go ahead and we don't need detect edges, right? We don't really have any sharp edges in this mesh here. I'm just gonna simply do zRemesher. All right, and check this out. Very quickly, automatically, ZBrush gave us a low poly version of our head, and it used the poly groups to control the flow of the edges, right? And this is great if you wanted to animate the eyes, for example, closing. You have this beautiful round topology that will be able to deform just fine during the animation. So this is absolutely fantastic. You gotta love ZBrush for its zRemesher. Now let me ask you an important question. We did insert eyeballs in here, right? Now, because we inserted eyeballs in here, we don't really need all of this geometry on the back of the eye. So technically, if it's a game model, you do want to make sure that you are very well optimized and you don't have extra geometry that is hidden from the game engine. And you usually just want to delete it, right? So let's go ahead and delete these circles inside. So I'm gonna do Control Shift and click, and that's gonna give me something like this. I'm gonna do auto groups, and I'm gonna do this again so you can see that this is indeed a different color. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press Control Shift and click to bring everything back. Press Control Shift and click on the eye inside, click on it again, and successfully just hide it, right? Once it's hidden, I'm gonna say delete hidden. And now that has been deleted and it no longer exists, right? So that's pretty much it. This is gonna be the process for the rest of the elements to quickly, one by one, turning them into low poly version of our game model, right? So this is great. Let's go ahead and maybe save this by creating a new tool, and we can call this low poly. So I'm gonna go to Turkey, I'm gonna create a new tool. I'm just gonna call this low poly because I do wanna maintain my previous one, which was the high one or the original one. So I'm gonna say save. Very nice. Let's go ahead and talk about the next piece down, which is gonna be, for me, it's gonna be this bandana. Okay. All right, and same thing, let me jump out of the polyframe. All right, and now let's go ahead and see if we can zRemesher this to, again, change the active points, right? Our head here is 840 points, which is absolutely beautiful. Let's go ahead and go see if we can reduce this one quite a bit as well, right? I'm gonna go to Geometry, go to zRemesher, and let's go ahead and do the same thing. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna give myself a 1 as the target. For this one here, this one does have a lot of interesting shapes. So let's try to leave adapt on initially. So 1 target, adapt on. I don't really need groups or edges because I don't really have anything, right? It's just one, solid blob anyways. So let's go ahead and see if this will work. I'm gonna say zRemesh. Make sure you don't have active symmetry on because obviously I'm assuming this is not symmetrical for you either. So I'm gonna say zRemesh. All right, that's gonna take me to about 3,800 points. And the reason this is so high, right? I said 1,000, but it's giving me 3,800. Why is it so much higher? It's 4 times larger than what I set the target to. And the reason for that is because my adapt was on, right? If you turn your polyframe on, you can see that it created a lot of extra edges to right here. You can see there's 4 times more edges than maybe necessary, right? That's why it's so high. So this shape as a low poly game character cannot be 4,000 points. That's way too crazy. I'm gonna turn adapt off, turn half on, and I'm gonna do zRemesh. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start dialing this down and attempt to keep the shape as much as I can, right? So this is now at 2,000, and you can see very closely, you need to watch your shape and make sure that it doesn't change too much, because we do need the shape to be somewhat close to the initial state in order for our bake to work with the high-res version, right? So that's really important. We don't want to move these edges too much. So I'm gonna say zRemesh again. And you can see that it's now it's at 992 points. And personally, I think this is pretty great. I don't really need it to be lower than this. Now, another really powerful thing that I want to point out to anyone who wants to do further optimization of geometry without using zRemesher, you can always use ZModeler, right? You can manually delete some of these edges and clean them up, right? So for example, I don't really need any of this topology here, right? Because this is going to be inside the character's head and no one's going to see it. And if I jump out of the, let me hold on the shift key, bring everything back, and you can see that those edges or the geometry inside of this bandana cannot be seen, right? It's actually hidden, somewhat hidden in there. So technically for a game model, I would prefer that was deleted, right? And you can easily delete that by, let's go ahead and hide this again. Let's just delete all of these edges and just see how does that work with zModeler. So I'm going to click on zModeler, hover over this loop here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's go ahead and do delete poly loop. And let's just simply find this orange line. You can see it's running along left or right. I'm going to click on it. And if your mesh was not spiral, right, it's going to delete just one of the loops. Sometimes zRemesher will spiral things out of control, meaning it doesn't really meet a full circle. It just goes, you know, kind of like a spiral, like a spring. It just goes, and then that will be a problem. But that's not the case here, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm assuming you also don't have a problem. If you do get a spiral for something like this, you have to do the polygroup trick where you make a selection of the inner pieces and then you zRemesh it, and that will give you perfect loops. So hopefully all that makes sense. But again, I'm going to delete this and just kind of optimize the topology. I'm going to bring it to 944 points. If I wanted to optimize it further, I have full control with zModeler, right? If I'm making a game and I have specific specs that maybe my my art manager gave me, I can actually manually change the topology, right? And I can dial this down, right? So I can hover over this edge, for example, go to delete, and let's do edge loop complete, and you can see that I can just delete some of these edges, right? And by doing that, that's going to continuously reduce my topology lower and lower, right? You can see now I'm at 800. I don't really want to do that. I'm just showing you that you have a lot of control when it comes to dialing your geometry down, right? So I'm gonna leave this. I think that's pretty cool at 944. And now if I bring this one together, if I unhide this one, you can see what it looks like. This is literally the low poly version that we have so far for the head and the bandana. So now all we need to do next is just continue down our list and kind of follow the same strategy, right? Let's go ahead and keep going. I'm gonna hide the head again and let me go into the beak. So same thing with this. Let's analyze a shape. I think we do want to keep the top geometry here in case he opens his beak really wide in the game. We don't really know, if that's going to be necessary or not. So let me take a look. I like the fact that the inner geometry is different polygroups. So I'm going to use it to my advantage. I think that's great. I actually wouldn't mind if these were different polygroups also. I'm going to press Control and make a selection of the kind of a nose hole here. And I could have turned on the active symmetry, but I'll just do it manually for both. Then I'll do Control W to create a different polygroup. Okay. And I actually don't want that. Let me undo that and try this one more time. So to fix this, to make sure that when I press Control key, it doesn't mask the inside, let's do this. Let's do Control, Shift, and click just on this one. So we'll hide the green one. And now I'll go ahead and turn on my active symmetry and hold on the Control key. Just make a selection of this part here. And what I'm going to do next is just do Control and W to create a new polygroup. Let's do Control, Shift, and click to bring the green back. And now this is going to be absolutely perfect, right? Let's go ahead and go to Geometry. Go to zRemesher. Let's do the same thing once again. I'm going to do 1. I'm going to say Adapt Off on this shape here. And I'm going to say Keep Groups, right? Because again, I want to keep this orange one, the red one, and the green one. All of that is going to be great for custom topology, right? So I like that. I'm going to leave symmetry, I think, off, right? I'm going to leave that off because I remember lifting this side of the mouth for the cigar. So I definitely don't want to lose that sculpting. So I'm going to leave that off. And let's go ahead and do zRemesher. All right, very nice. This is what I get. So this is about 1,000 points. And I can see if this is good. If you thought, if you think it's great, then it's fantastic. You can always, just for fun, I like to do this, just go, oops, keep groups on. You can always do half and just break it and then undo it, right? By breaking it, we can see if we can push the shape just a little further or not, right? So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna say zRemesher. And you can see that I went to 594, but I completely destroyed my nose here, which I don't like, right? I don't like that at all, so I'm gonna undo this, and I like this better, right? And as I said before, if you needed this to be lower, but you don't want to break the mesh, just use ZModeler to manually clean up some of these edges and get rid of some, right? So again, maybe, you know, for whatever reason, I need this to be below 1,000, right? Well, I can hover over this edge, and let me just simply delete, for example, this here. And I can even delete this one here. And let's just keep going, right? I'm gonna delete, let's delete this one here. And now I just jumped below 1,000, right? So I'm just kind of showing you the process of what it takes. All right, very cool. So I like this, that's great. Let's go ahead and continue. The next one down is gonna be our eyes. And these are gonna be super simple. Now, if I turn the head back on, you can see that the eyes are great, but there's going to be a large portion of the eyes, pretty much half of them, that are not going to be seen, right? Unless in the game you're going to have a situation where the eye pops out or something like that. Normally, you probably want to delete the back side of the eyes as well. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to turn this on. And what we can do next is let's go to geometry. Let's turn off active symmetry, right? Because my eyes are a different size. I don't want them to be symmetrical. Adapt off, I'm gonna go to 1 once again. And I don't really need any of this. I'm gonna say zRemesher. All right, so then I get something like this. This is 945. And you know, I could go half and see if I like that. Maybe that's even better. Honestly, I like this even better. 492, so low. If I wanted to, I could go to solo and delete the backs here. But honestly, this is so low that I don't really, this is getting, you know, a little too crazy. I don't really need it to be that low. So I'm just gonna leave this alone, also for the sake of speed. Of course, if you're making a mobile game, take the time and clean up some of the faces that you don't need or will not be seen. There's some cleanup there that I could do to reduce this much lower as well. I'm not gonna worry about any of that, right? Now look at this, we have an incredibly clean, beautiful topology. And it's looking really nice, right? Let's just review everything we did so far. So far we did the bandana, the head, the eyes, and you can see the difference in your geometry. It looks like it's game ready because it's clean and it's super low, right? This is great. All right, let's continue. So the next piece that I want to work on is actually the top of his head. It's missing here, so let me find it in my list. It's actually right here, right below the eyes. If I wanted to change the order of these, I can just select one and just move it up, right? I can just move this around. And let's just work on this guy next. So I'm gonna turn on my polyframe. This is already different poly groups. If that's not the case for you, just click auto groups and that's going to assign different color because we did keep them separate, if you remember. I like that. Let's go to geometry and turn adapt off. Again, set this to 1. I do want to say keep groups, right? I don't really want these shapes merging together at all. And I'm gonna leave active symmetry off and let's just do zRemesher. All right, this is absolutely fabulous. I think this is great. I can try half, see if I like it. And I guess 575, I actually do like it. I'm actually happy I did that. Let me go one more just for fun. And now this is getting even lower. And honestly, this is actually looking good as well. Because look how low the topology is, but yet it's remaining the shape, right? So you want to, you know, this is what you want. You want to maintain the shape, but have the res to be as low as possible. So this is pretty much perfect, even for like a you know, like a AAA game, this is perfect, perfect geometry. And of course, if you want to break it, just so you have some contrast between what's good and what's ugly, you know, let's do one more. And now you can see that now it's melting down too much. And again, I'm going to repeat this one more time. You don't want to change the shape so dramatically because your high-res version, right? Let me go back. You can see how the high-res version is going to be this. So when you're baking the detail over to your lower poly mesh, the detail is not going to carry over if this topology is not close to the high-res version, right? So I hope that makes sense. So for that reason, I think I'm just going to go with this here, and I'm pretty happy with that. All right, let's go ahead and keep going down. The next one is going to be just these eyes, right? And if I wanted to, I could actually hide everything else and let's just look at these. Now, this is interesting. Another thing that we can do, instead of using zRemesher, we can actually decimate items. Now, what is the difference between decimation and zRemeshing? If you zRemesh something, it's going to give you a quad-based topology. If you decimate something, it's going to give you triangles. Now, what is the reason? Why wouldn't you want to use triangles in the game model usually? The reason for that is because you want to be mindful about deformation during your animations, right? So if you are deforming or bending something or animating something like the body, you don't want triangles because it's not going to deform well when it's bending. But something like this where it's a pupil, I know that this will never change its shape, so there's absolutely no reason why I can't just decimate it instead of zRemesh it. So let's try that just for fun. I'm going to say pre-process current. So this is so low, 79, right? I shouldn't even probably be optimizing this because it's so low, but I'm just showing you guys the process. So let me go to 80% just for fun. Do decimate, and again, it's not really working, right? So that's fine. I'm going to actually leave it because 79 is ridiculously low. If we wanted to manually clean this up, we can again go to ZModeler, hold down the Alt key, and we can just manually select all of these here because these will never be seen, right? They're going to be on the back. They're going to be on the back of the character. So all of this is useless geometry, right? So now since I selected it, I can go to delete. I'll do single poly and just click on it to delete it. I can turn double on if I needed to, but all of that is completely useless, and that took me to 78 points, and that's fine. I'm just going to leave it at that. Let's go ahead and do this one. Same thing. I'm just going to come in the back of it and do same thing. I'm going to hold on the Alt key, make a selection. Let's zoom in and just make sure we select all of this nonsense here. We can even do this one. Hover over the face and just delete it, right? And just make sure we didn't delete anything that we need. Some of that could be cleaned up, but again, for the sake of speed, you know, I'm not going to do that. But if you are creating something high quality, you probably want to clean this up. So I think that's great. Let's go ahead and move to the next one. The next one is going to be, I'm going to press F on my keyboard. Let's do it again. This is going to be the lower beak, right? And again, this already has two different poly groups, which is great. So I can go to geometry, and like we've been doing, let's do one. Say keep groups. Remember, I lowered this for the cigar, so I do not want active symmetry on. I'm just going to say zRemesh. 894, I think that's pretty cool. I could do half if I wanted to. And I think that will, let me see if that will work. I'm gonna go with this 894. I think that's perfectly fine for what I'm doing. If you wanted something lower, of course, this would be probably better, 400. That's great. Now keep in mind, one thing I wanna insert in here is the fact that if you wanted to manually create topology versus doing it automatically with zRemesher, you know, if you bring this high-res version into Maya, you could use quad draw to manually place each single polygon, and then your model would be ridiculously clean and low poly. But usually that's not really necessary unless you're creating something, you know, like a AAA quality asset, or you're making a mobile game asset where every single vertex really literally has meaning, right? Usually in you know, if it's a normal game character, what we're doing here would be just fine. It doesn't really need to be that well optimized, but keep in mind that would be another way of doing it. It's just using Quad Draw in Maya, or you can even do it in Blender where you're just manually putting in poly. So you can even do it here too. There's a tool in here that will allow you to manually lay down your topology. But zRemesher is definitely the best and the fastest way to do it. And personally, I highly recommend doing it this way because it's just so much faster, right? All right, very cool. Let's keep going. So the next one is going to be the cigar. And with the cigar, I'm going to press Control key, and let me just make a selection here for all of this here. I'm going to do Control W, make it a different polygroup. You can barely see it because it's like it's pink on red for some reason. That's fine. Let me go to geometry, and in here, you know what? I can even let's do this too. I'm going to do Control. Let's make a selection back here. Something like that is fine. I'm going to do Control W. And now I'm going to say keep groups. I'm going to say 1, adapt off, and let me just do zRemesher. All right, so this is the topology for the cigar. This is way, way, way too high for what this is. I don't need this green one, right? No one's going to see it, so I'm going to Control Shift and click to hide it. I'm going to do delete hidden, and now let me just dial this down. So I'm going to say half, and let's just see if we can make this something a little more optimized. I think 354 is perfect. You can see that this right here doesn't need all of those edges. So let's just manually delete some of these, right? I can just go through every other one and delete it. Unless you're going to be bending your cigar. You know, if you bend it, then obviously you need the edges. If you don't bend it in the game, you don't need any of this, right? What is the point of it? Because it's not really even holding the shape. It's just like useless, you know, useless geometry, right? So I just got it down to 146, and I don't even need this one, honestly. And that is pretty awesome, right? Very well optimized. Very cool. Let's just keep going. The next one is going to be the tongue, and for the tongue, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to leave my symmetry on because I think this was symmetrical. That's fine. I'm gonna go geometry, adapt off. Let's do this 0.5. No one is gonna see it because his mouth is closed. So I need this to be really low poly, and I'm just gonna do zRemesher. All right, I got it down to 106, and honestly, let me press F here. I think that's pretty much perfect, right, for this. I'm gonna keep moving. Next one is gonna be this little thing that's hanging from his beak. And I'm gonna dial it down all the way to 129. All right, let's go ahead and do the feet. I'm gonna press F. Now, to do the feet, there's 2 of them, and there's absolutely no reason why I should do both of them because they are exactly the same. So let's delete one of them. I'm gonna do, again, you can do auto groups if you wanna make sure that these are different poly groups. I'm gonna do Control Shift and click twice. And let me go ahead and select all of these. So I just hid the entire, his right leg. I'm gonna say delete hidden, right? And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this here and zRemesh this. So let's go ahead and do that. Go to zRemesh, adapt. I'm gonna leave adapt off. I do want keep the groups, and I'm gonna leave it on target 1. And I think that works well for this character, right? Some other characters might have different, like a target average, but 1 seems to be doing really well with this one. I'm gonna leave active symmetry definitely off because this is not symmetrical. And I'm gonna say zRemesh. All right, now I have something like this. It took me down below 1,000. And honestly, this looks pretty much perfect. I don't have any complaints whatsoever. I think this is great. ZBrush did a beautiful job zRemeshing this. So what I need to do now is just simply, you know, I need 2 of them, right? So the easiest thing to do is just simply, you can of course do mirror and weld if you want, but you can also just duplicate it and just flip it over, right? And now, of course, we're gonna have 2 of them. And same thing, right? Let's turn our polyframe on, go to geometry, and I can see that this is actually subdivided. So I'm gonna go back to level 1, and I'm gonna delete higher, right? I don't really need this to be subdivided because we are creating low poly version, right? So I'm gonna go to zRemesher, I'm gonna turn adapt off, press 1, keep groups, and let's go ahead and zRemesh this. I suppose we could turn active symmetry on because this is identical, right? There's no reason why these can't be symmetrical. So that's great, and let's do zRemesh. All right, very beautiful. So now we have 2,000 points for all this stuff, and honestly, again, I really don't see the need for optimizing it further. I think this is great. I want to maintain some of these edges here. I don't want to delete too many of them because I do have this really nice curve, and 2,000 points for that I think is fine, right? If you wanted to, again, you can go through and do half and you know, reduce it further, but I think this is great. Let's go ahead and keep going. The next one down is going to be the body, right? This one is super important, and it does have some poly groups here as well, which is great. I'm going to keep all of those. This is symmetrical, so I'm going to leave active symmetry on. That's fine. And let's go ahead and do, I'm going to leave adapt on for this one. And let's go to 1, say keep groups, right? And the reason I leave adapt on is because I do see some sharp shapes here that I want to maintain, right? I can even say detect edges, because I really do want to keep some of this main shape. I think that's important, right? And let's go ahead and see what that gives us. So right now we are at 734,000 points. I'm going to go ahead and do zRemesh. All right, so that brought me down to about 3,000. And we can decide if we want to go lower or if this will work. If you want to try lower, you can always turn adapt off, do half, and do zRemesh, and see if you like the results. Mine are terrible. It totally got destroyed. Let me actually try to leave adapt on with the half and see if I can get below 2900 and do zRemesh. And actually, again, it got destroyed, right? So I'm gonna leave it at this, which means this is why I'm showing you this, you guys, because now the only way to reduce this is to either manually create topology or use zModeler to dial this down manually, right? So I think I'm gonna go with this. This is pretty great. Let's go ahead and go to Subtool, and the next one down is gonna be the weapon and the neck. I think I want to tackle the neck, but I do want to bring up an interesting point, which is all of this geometry here is actually, in our sculpt specifically, is underneath this piece here, right? So none of this geometry is actually being seen, which means we need to delete all of this, right? It's not necessary to exist. So let's go to zModeler, let's do delete poly loop, and let's just be careful. You can see this orange line up here, so I'm going to delete this, and I'm also going to delete all of let's see, all of this here, right? All right, very cool. Now I have this. I'm going to do Control and drag to select this, do Control and W to change the poly groups, then do Control Shift and click on it to hide it, and now I can do delete hidden, right? So I deleted that nonsense. We don't really need it. And I can turn the double on. You can see that the neck was indeed deleted, right? So that is great. We don't need it. Let's go ahead and bring this piece back, and let's optimize this next, right? I'm going to select this layer, and now obviously I need to dial this down. So again, go to geometry. Let's go ahead and do 1. And I don't need active symmetry, just in case. I'm not 100% sure that this is symmetrical. And I'm going to do 1. And let me just do, let's actually solo this for 1 second. And you can see that all of this here underneath is, you know, we don't need that either. So actually, you know what? I'm going to say keep groups because I need to delete all of that. All right, I'm going to jump out of solo. Let's do zRemesh. That's going to give me something along these lines. Let me solo this. Let's do Control Shift and click on the inside part and delete hidden. And now we don't have the inside part. All right, and then the other thing that I could do is maybe, you know, this is still a little bit too dense. It doesn't really need to be that dense. Even if we animate the neck, you know, if you decide to animate or rig it, whatever, I think this is still probably too much. Let's just delete some of these here. It just seems a little too crazy. All right, I think that's a little bit better. I know that this piece right here is actually going inside the head, and to double check that, I can always unhide my head and see at what point does it actually do that, right? So all of this geometry inside the head, again, is completely 100% not necessary, right? So let me hide the head, and all of this stuff here needs to be, you know, deleted, right? So let's go ahead and delete, oops, let's delete all of this, and Control and drag to select this, do Control W, and then let's do Control Shift and click twice to hide it, and we'll delete hidden, right? Now, if I put the head back, I can see that maybe this is, you know, that's a little more optimized, right? That makes a lot more sense. So I think that's great. Let me jump out of transparent mode and take a look. The last thing that I have left is just the weapons, right? So let's go ahead and press Shift on the eyes, select our weapons layer. You know, we could bring it down too, right? Because that's the last one that we didn't do yet. Let's do a couple things. One, we don't need both weapons, right? Just like with the leg, we just really need just one, right? So let me turn on my PolyFrame and take a look. I can see that all of these bullets are the same poly group. So one thing I could do is just do Control, let me make this a little bit larger. I can do Control Shift and click to hide the weapons. I can then go to Split and do Split Hidden. That's gonna put the weapons on a different layer and leave the bullets on this layer, right? And let's talk about the bullets first. Right now they are at 28,000. If you wanted to optimize this really well, the best way to do it is probably going to be manually, but obviously I don't have the time to go through each bullet and optimize it. So if we use the decimation master, we could try to pre-process current, and let's just shoot for a target. Right now it's at 28,000. If I say 20K, and you can see there's some presets here, right? I'm going to say 20K as my target. And when I click on that, you can see that it's maintaining the shape of the bullets, but now it took me down to 20,000, right? Which is a little bit better, still not great, and not that fantastic for optimization, but this is an incredibly complex mesh. Let's try this at 60%, and I'm going to say decimate, and right now we're at 20,000. If I say decimate, you can see that now it took me down to 17,000. And I'm still maintaining the shape of the bullets. I didn't break them yet. So we could try even less. Let's try 50. And essentially, you could just keep lowering it until this breaks. And then that's, you know, that you kind of reached your, you know, your best optimal place as far as the automation goes. So I'm going to try this again at 50. I'm going to say decimate. And now I can start seeing that I am getting some strange issues with this crazy, you know, crazy geometry, right? You can see some holes are missing and all of that stuff. So I'm gonna undo that. And for this, I'm not gonna be able to get it lower than 17,000, which is not that great, but because this is, again, super complex, that's what it needs to be, right? So the only logical thing would be to, if you wanted to get this really, really nice and high quality, is you would have to manually change the topology of this for probably each bullet and just align it. So, you know, obviously we don't have time for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next piece, which is gonna be this one. And this one is 26,000, and it has all these nice poly groups already as a part of it. So a couple things, right? I don't need two of them. Let's do Control and drag to select one of them. And let's go to split, and we'll do split on mask. That's going to put them in different layers, right? And now what we need to do is just literally, let's just work on this one, right? I'm going to press F a couple times because pressing F once will zoom in, and then the second one will align it. So keep that in mind. All right, so these are all already have really nice poly groups, and this guy here is 13,000. Let me just go to geometry, and let me attempt to press half. I'm gonna say keep groups, detect edges, and let's just see if we can dial this down to something a little bit lower, right? I'm gonna do half. And now I am at 7,000. I think that's just a little bit better. It did destroy this shape here. I'm gonna undo. I don't really want to destroy that shape. So check this out, there's a trick. If you wanted to hide this, you could do Control Shift and click to hide just that. And let's say with that being hidden, I can run the zRemesher. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna zRemesh everything else, but then ignore this piece and just put it back, right? And again, I'm at 7,400. So I think that's pretty good. If I wanted to manually clean this up more, just like I've been telling you guys, you can just manually, go through and delete some of these edges that are that might not be necessary, and clean it up that way, right? You can reduce the topology. Now also remember, there's going to be quite a few pieces that don't need to have back sides. So if I do auto group on this and do Control Shift and click, you remember there's going to be extra sides here that don't need to exist, right? So you do want to go through and clean all this up. I don't want to spend the time showing you guys that, but anything that is hidden and not seen, all this extra geometry, you just need to be really careful, go through the model and find all the elements that are not going to be seen, and just simply simply delete them, right? We don't need them. So that's important. And obviously all of these edges are also extra, right? None of this needs to exist. This one does, because this actually creates a nice shape here. But let's go ahead and bring it back. So that's going to be the process, right? Again, I'm not going to do that, but that's going to be the process for all of these, right? All of these need to be cleaned up. So now you understand what it takes, and go ahead and do that on your end. All right, very nice. So now we kind of finished all of these pieces, and let's do this. Let's select this guy here, because we did not optimize this one. So I'm actually gonna literally just delete it. I'm gonna say okay. I'm gonna duplicate this one and flip it over. Now let's just do Shift and click on the eye, bring everything back, jump out of our polyframe, and now we have something that is amazing, because this is not perfect, but this is a low poly version of our character, and he's looking good, and he's ready to he's ready for the next level, which is going to be the UVs, right? That's going to be the final level, and then we can bring it into Substance Painter. All right, so how do we take this guy and create UVs for him? Well, let's go ahead and again save our tool, right? Because I keep saving it as a low poly version. And let's see if we can just use the automated UVs here in ZBrush to automatically create UVs for us. Now, the best way to do it, the proper way of doing it, is to probably export this guy as a low poly model to something like Maya or Blender, and then manually create all the UVs, unwrapping each piece individually, which will take a very long time, but that's probably the proper way of doing it if you want to create, again, kind of a AAA high quality asset. Again, cleaning up all the hidden geometry and laying out your UVs and spending a good, a couple hours on doing it properly. But if you, if you wanted to do it fast, there is a way that you could do it automatically here in ZBrush. So I'm gonna explore that option instead, right? So to do this, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to merge all of these pieces into one. And this is going to be my low poly merged version. So I'm going to go to merge. I'm going to say merge visible. Okay, so that's going to give me a another merged version, right? So now we have the low poly merged, and then we have a high res merged with all the detail, right? This one is 1.1 million. This one right here is going to be about 43,000. Honestly, you could probably get it easily halfway down to like something like this should be, could be super low, like 20,000 if you wanted to clean all this extra stuff up. including the bullets. I think the bullets alone were like 20,000, right? But this is pretty good, right? We have 43,000. Now, how do we take this and unwrap it automatically, right? So I can turn on my PolyFrame, and I can see that I have all of these pieces that are currently, already polygrouped. So let's use that to our advantage and unwrap this automatically. So I'm going to go to Decimation. I'm going to go to my Z plugins. And in here, I have something called UV Master. I'm going to turn off symmetry. I don't want this to be symmetrical, right? Because there's elements in here that are not symmetrical. And I'm going to say polygroups because I want to maintain all of these different polygroups. That's important, right? And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to simply say unwrap. All right, if you wanted to see what that actually looks like, we can say flatten. And this is going to be the preview of our UVs for our character. And we can decide if some of these shapes needed to be adjusted manually. And to do this, what you could do is you can say unflatten, and then you can say check seams. And when you say check seams and jump out of PolyFrame, ZBrush is gonna draw lines telling you where it created automatic seams in order to unwrap your character. So you can decide if that works or not, but you can also control the seams. And I really don't want to get into this to be, again, another 2-hour video, but you could control the seams by painting them and then telling ZBrush where you want the seams. You can even use creasing to unwrap the head a very specific way and control. You have full control in ZBrush over where the seams are. All right, and I have a few tutorials on my channel showing how to control the seams using creases and even using, you can use control painting, all of that. You can find that on my channel. Again, for the sake of time and speed, let's move forward and move on to the next level, because this will work just fine for what we're doing here, right? So what I'm going to do is let me jump out of this. And now I have a low poly version of my character, which is great. Let's go ahead and export that out. And the other one was called Turkey High Res. This one is going to be Turkey. Let's go ahead and name it Low Res and say save. Very nice. Let's go ahead and jump into Substance Painter. So to get going, I'm going to say File, New, and I am going to switch my document resolution to 2K. And I am going to say, I'm going to leave it on DirectX, that's fine. I'm going to leave this by default at the PBR metallic roughness. I'm not going to change the template, that's fine. Let's just find the low res version of our character. So here it is. I'm going to grab my OBJ file and I'm going to say open. And I'm going to say OK, and make sure that you don't have any of these selected. You don't need to do unwrap because we just did that in ZBrush, right? So I'm going to say OK. All right, so here is how my character comes in. I can zoom out, and the first thing we want to do is bake this with our high-res version and see, if it's looking good, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to Texture Set Settings, and I'm going to find something called Bake Mesh Maps. Click on that. And in here, I'm going to switch this to 2K as well. And for the high poly parameters, let's go ahead and find our other mesh, which is going to be called high res. And I'm going to say open, right? All right, and I do have some issues. You can see that it's telling me in red that some of these things are not going to work out. Let's just try and see. So I'm going to go to anti-aliasing. I'm going to say, I'm going to switch this to 4X. I think that's fine. And let's just do a quick bake. All right, once it finishes, I'm going to say return to paint mode and take a look. And this is the result. So you can see that everything looks pretty awesome. I have a couple pieces that are that have an issue, like right here. I'm not really too concerned about that. I can clean that up here. But the reason this kind of stuff happens is when the low poly mesh doesn't align closely with the high poly mesh, right? You can see that there's a couple bullets that were an issue, but everything else looks really good and very nice. Like the fur came out, or I guess the feathers came out really nice. The eyes look really clean. And honestly, I just have a couple small cleanups, right? So to address this, the first thing I could do to fix this right here, if you want to figure out where's this problem coming from, if you go to your bake mesh maps, you can see under normal, if I delete that, you can see that that goes away, which means I'm going to undo that, obviously, Control Z. Obviously that is the problem, right? So it's coming from the normal map. Now, since I know that, I can easily clean this up. How do I clean this normal map up? What I could do before I even paint, I would love to clean this up just so I don't have any issues. You have to just kind of review your model and make sure you don't have any your own kind of dark patches, right? So to clean that up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, I'm going to create a new layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt and click on the normal map to isolate, just have the normal map by itself. Go to project and find the normal map. So I'm going to grab this normal map and I'm going to drag it inside this normal map. And what I'm going to do next is go to my texture set settings, and right here under normal mixing, instead of saying combine, I'm going to say replace. And to clean this up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let me go to normal, and let's go ahead and switch this from, let's switch this to normal. Let's right click on this and say white mask. I'm going to go grab my brush, and I'm going to switch it, make sure it's in black color, and I'm going to go to, let's go ahead and go to our brushes and grab something like this right here should be fine, which is going to be just the basic soft brush. And what I could do is, using the mask, I can just clean this up. I can just literally paint the problem that I see, right? I don't want that black spot there. And I can just paint that up and make sure that it's not, not going to be a problem for me. So I could do the same thing here. I want to be careful not to break up some of these nice lines that I have in between. So I'm just going to literally just delete the issue area, which is going to be right here. If I wanted to blend some of this here, my normal map, I can always do, I can grab this right here, which is the smudge tool. And it's a really cool trick to, even for a normal map, you can take it and just kind of blend it in. And, let's just change the flow to be a little less. And what I could do, I can just literally blend the normal map mask over it and just create like a smooth transition, right? Just a little bit of a painting, a little bit of a cleanup that I have to do on my end. Holding down Shift and right clicking, you can move the light and make sure that, this looks nice, right? Whatever you're cleaning up. For me, that's perfect. I see another issue here, but not really, right? Because this is going to be actually kind of a dark brown color anyways. All right, so that's how you do it. And you can do the same thing on any other piece of your mesh that's a problem. And then usually what I like to do is I'll just actually call this normal fix, right? So I know, okay, I used this layer to clean up whatever is needed. But at this point, once you get everything cleaned up, the next step is just literally painting the character. And let me actually bring my reference of the other paint that we did in ZBrush. All right, so here's my character. Remember we did this PolyPaint in ZBrush, right? So we could do kind of something very similar in here. And, there's a few things that I personally like to do whenever I use Substance Painter. One of the things that I personally like to do, I change the environment map to this glazed one. I just like this color personally better for what I'm, to kind of start painting. I like to turn the shadows on, and I like to also turn them to like 20, just so they're there, but they're not really overwhelming, right? Because in the PBR environment, if this is inside the game, you will have real-time shadows, so you might want to turn them on and be part of your texture, right? And let's see, what else can we do? Let's go ahead and save our project, right? You want to make sure you save your scene. Very nice. And one by one, just like we did in our video part number 3, we just need to go through and start kind of painting this guy, right? I'm gonna grab the first color, and let's just call this, we'll call this red. And what I'm gonna do is let's just choose the color. I'm gonna click on this sample color, and let me just see if I can just literally just sample this red right here that we already have for our turkey. And maybe I can actually modify this if I wanted to. Maybe something, something like this. This looks like the color that we had. And I think that's great. That's going to be sort of the neck and the head, right? And I guess the part on top too. So that's great. Now to do this one, if you remember, this was kind of a dark red. So I'm going to create a new layer. And you know what? I'm just going to actually duplicate this one. I'm going to duplicate this red, and I'm going to call this one dark red. And I'm going to change it into a dark red. That's going to be my bandana here. Do something like that. And now what I need to do is I need to tell Substance Painter that, hey, only apply this dark red to this piece only, right? So I'm going to right click on this and say black mask. Go here to polygon fill, click on this mesh one and just select it. That's going to select my entire bandana, right? Now I have like this dark red. And the nice thing about Substance Painter is that you can still go through and adjust this at any time. So it's really awesome program that you have full control. Let's say I want to change the dark red to, to blue. I can easily do that at any time. I'm just gonna attempt to match what I have there, right? So let's just go back to that, but you have full control at any time. Let's keep going. So the next thing is gonna be the eyes. I'm gonna say new paint layer. I'm gonna call this white. And let me just go ahead and select white. Maybe we can just do maybe like a little yellowish white for the eyes. Something like this I think is great. All right, I'm gonna do right click, do black mask once again, and just tell Substance Painter, hey, I just want these guys, right? That's I don't really have any other white elements. Maybe the feathers in a minute, but this is pretty perfect. Let's go ahead and select create a black color next. I'm gonna say black, and just like before, I'm gonna go to like a bluish, kind of a bluish black right here. Okay, right click, go to black mask, and same thing. Let's just select these guys, and now we have something like that. Maybe I don't want them to be so shiny. Keep in mind you always can adjust all of this, right? I can change the roughness at any point. Maybe I want it to be more like this. And I have a little maybe cleanup there, but that looks pretty good. And each element has its own roughness, right? So for example, maybe I don't want this to be so shiny. I can adjust this as well. It's more of a material. And obviously you also have an ocean of smart materials that you can just drag right onto your piece. And I'm not going to spend time doing that, but you can download thousands of materials that you can just drag right on, and some of them already have folds and everything else, and very quickly it will give you the proper roughness and give you a whole separate army of settings to play with. But again, I'm just going to kind of maintaining what I have here and just keeping it somewhat simple and cartoony, right? But this is not really like a hardcore Substance Painter tutorial. I'm just showing you the workflow going from ZBrush to Substance Painter. All right, so the next, I would love to get this orange going, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to create a new layer, and let me call this orange. Very easy, and let's just choose a kind of a, like I was doing, kind of a reddish orange. Something like this I think is great. I'm going to right click, do a black mask. Again, tell Substance Painter that I want this guy and this guy to be orange. I also would like his feet to be orange, right? Okay, so that's great. Let's go ahead and take a look. Actually, I'm gonna go back to my black one. I'm gonna select the mask, and I just realized that my nails are also black. So that's important. Let's go ahead and choose that. And that's looking good, and I'm gonna keep going. The next one's gonna be let's do the brown, right? The brown is gonna be like the feathers, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Let's do brown. I'm gonna choose my sample color and just literally just choose this color. I think that's perfect. Same thing, black mask. Let's tell Substance Painter this is going to be brown, and all of these are going to be brown too. Very cool. I'm going to go ahead and click on my cigar as well. It's kind of a similar color. For the weapons, you remember we made it kind of a bluish metal, right? Bluish gray. So I'm going to do the same thing. Let's just call this metal. That's fine. And again, I can use a material that's already pre-made. And let me just show you, for anyone who's super new and doesn't really know anything about smart materials, you can just go to a smart material in here and just type in the word metal. And then whatever you downloaded as a smart material, you can just literally take it and drag it onto your mesh. So let's say, maybe I want to take this steel dark age. I can just take it and drag it right into the layers and release it. Once you release it, you can see what it's doing. It's going to apply the smart material with all the beautiful detail right onto the mesh, which looks fantastic, right? But now all I need to do is just same thing. I'm going to black mask it and tell, and then I just have to tell Substance Painter that these are the only pieces that I want painted metal, right? So I can even drag and select it and do it that way. That's also an option. So just very carefully, I can just select it and quickly tell Substance Painter that all of this stuff is metal. And same thing for the bullets. Now, here's the thing. I can do it this way where I can select it, or let me remove this black mask actually. If I remove the mask, the entire thing is going to be metal, right? And I do see that I have an issue here, but I need to fix that. But check this out. What I can do is I can take this. Let's drag it all the way to the bottom. And the reason I want to go on the bottom is because I want to go below the normal, right? Because I want this normal detail to stay. That's important, right? So I don't want the dark steel interfere with my normal painted detail. So I'm going to go below. And then for the red, I just need to create a mask. So the metal kind of shines through, right? So I'm going to say black, black mask. And now you can see all the metal kind of kicked in, even for the bullets. But now I just have to tell Substance Painter that, hey, this is going to be red and this is going to be red. And this up here is going to be red as well, right? But now we didn't have to do anything with the bullets because they were automatically applied, right? Because this is going to be, because it doesn't really interfere with all these other masks that we created. So I hope that makes sense. So it was really easy and very fast. So that was cool. Let's say I want to create like a little bluish tint to my metal weapons, right? How do I do that? Well, what I could do is just like in Photoshop, you just create a new layer on top. Let's do Alt color so that we turn all these off and just simply literally just choose blue color, something like this. And let's just do like a bluish, like this. I think that's pretty cool. All right, and you can see the difference. And then of course I can just take this and change the opacity, right? Maybe I just want it to be just a little bit blue. Maybe I'll go to like 65 and you can see the difference before and after, right? Again, I'm just trying to be a little bit closer to what I have there. And this is gonna be, I'm kind of painting it like a toy. Obviously, if you wanted to add more variation to this, it's literally just painting, right? So I can, for example, select this here, and if I wanted to add maybe, like a lighter belly, right? What I would do is I can just create a new layer over this, and let's do Alt click on the color. Let's click on this sample color. Let's select this brown once again. And let's say we want to do a little like a brown, like a lighter belly here, right? I can go to the paint. Let me reset my search here. Grab something like the soft brush, make it just a little bit larger and change the flow maybe if I wanted to. Let me just make this a little bit lighter. And now I can literally just create something that looks like a lighter belly, right? So I could do something like that. Right now I'm also affecting the bullets. So again, you need a mask. I'm going to create a black mask and tell Substance Painter I'm only doing the belly. Ignore everything else. Now I have kind of a lighter belly here. I can even do a filter. Do a couple things. I can use like the smudge and just smudge the belly. Or I can just take this color right here. Right click, go to add filter. And let's just do Alt click on the color only. Let's do a blur, and we can blur this, right? You can see how I'm controlling the blur of the belly, right? So maybe I'll do something like this. So it's a little bit, it's blended a little bit better, right? And that's pretty cool. So that's how you can go through and paint this manually, creating highlights and all of that stuff. If I wanted the beak to be a little shinier, I can select the beak, and again, as I told you guys before, you can change the roughness, right? So you have full control, and all of this is gonna be baked into the actual textures when you export it out and bring it into your, into your game engine, right? So Substance Painter is its own universe. It's there's a lot of tricks. It's very detailed, but this is kind of the super basic process that you can go. Let's go ahead and save this. Once you're done and you're done with your highlights and you're happy with your materials, the next thing you could do is you can always preview an array. In Substance Painter, you have something called array. If you click on this here, that's going to give you kind of a rendered version of your piece, and this totally looks like a toy already. If you don't want to see the background, you can always turn that off by going to here and choosing something called clear color, and then this is going to be the color, right? I like to set it to maybe dark. Let's do like a dark gray, and of course you can do whatever you like, but that's going to be essentially the process. The other thing you can do is go into your environment map and change different environments. Obviously this is going to look much different based on the lighting that you select. Each one is going to be dramatically different because this is a PBR, like a real-time lighting, that is important, right? And you can play around and see what you like. You can also rotate your environment. You can change the rotation, and that's going to also dramatically change the look and the shadow position and all of that. So again, there's many different tricks to this program. If we wanted to add the design on the tail like we had before, what we could do is we can create a new layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to alphas, and in alphas there's all these different options that you could choose and find. So one of the things that I personally have is something called the moon. And of course you can just import your own alphas into here. It's just a very simple graphic, just has to be a square with black and white. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this layer, and I'm going to double click on it to activate my alpha. For the base color, I'm just going to press Alt and make sure I just select the color by itself in this layer 2, and let's choose something like the white color. Let's make sure that our flow is 100%, the stroke opacity is 100%, and for the size, I can decide what the size is, and holding down the control key, I can rotate this, and essentially I just need to literally just simply stamp this on the tail, and that's going to give us, somewhat similar design to what we had in ZBrush. We can also turn on this little button right here, which is going to be the symmetry button. And the symmetry button is nice because it's going to allow you to create the same design, symmetrically, right? Again, just like we had in ZBrush. So I can quickly go around and add that to my tail. Let me go ahead and do one here as well. And right here, I can just turn off the symmetry to kind of create this last one in the middle, right? We also forgot to add a little fire to the cigar. So let me create yet another paint layer. And I'm not naming these, I'm kind of going somewhat fast, but for this, all I need to do is just literally paint this on. So I'm going to go to, let's go to my brush, and let's just decide what we could use for like the smoke effect. For here, I think I'm just going to use even something like this, something with the noise. It doesn't really matter which one, just something noisy. I think this will work. And what I could do is let me make sure I'm in the color, and for the inside part of the cigar, I'm just going to do something like a red, and just make my brush a little bit smaller, and just create kind of a nice noisy pattern here inside, right? If I needed to clean something up, I can just go to the eraser, and let's for the eraser, let's just make sure we have something like a sharp part basic hard brush, and if I change the size, I can literally simply erase whatever I don't want, right? Just very quickly. Common sense, right? Let's just clean this up. And that's the whole idea, right? You just create layers and then you just simply paint those layers, and that's pretty much it. That's kind of the Substance 101. Everything else is just bells and whistles. But the basic idea is just simply creating layers, having clean UVs, nice bake, and just adding colors as you wish. All right, so take the time, play around with this, and create some awesome textures. Once you're done, just simply go to File, Export Textures, and you will be ready to take this guy to the next step. All right, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in our next one.